Thank you, Parth. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the 30th lecture of this lecture series, NET and GSET Mentoring Lecture Series, organized by Alumni Association of Department of English and CLS Saurashtra University, Rajkot. As we all know that this lecture series has commenced from 9th of December 2020. And we have fortunately reached to the 30th lecture of this lecture series. And this is really this is a great opportunity for all of us to listen to the stalwarts and the scholarly speakers who share their knowledge and expertise with us, especially with the NET and SLET aspirants who are preparing for this exam for assistant professor and JRF. I, Imran Khan, welcome all of you to this lecture series. And today we have very prominent speaker with us, Ms. Surbhi Parmar. Warm welcome, ma'am, to this lecture series. And thank you so much for sparing your valuable time for this endeavor. Let me introduce ma'am. Ms. Surbhi Parmar is currently working as an assistant professor of English at Government Arts College, Mandal, Ahmedabad. Ma'am is also pursuing her PhD on reception and reconstruction of the Mahabharata in Indian English literature from Saurashtra University, Rajkot. Madam has qualified GSET 2016 and UGC NET with JRF 2017. She has several research papers to her credit. Ma'am has contributed her chapters in the book called Literary Criticism, Plato to Modern Age, and Art and Aesthetics of Modern Mythopoeia, Literatures, Myth, and Revisioning. She is also a poet, and her poems are published by Visual Words, an anthology of art and words based in Berlin, Germany. Ma'am has also featured in Renaissance issue of Nightingale and Sparrow, a literary magazine, and press based in Pennsylvania, USA. Besides this, ma'am has also featured a poet in Prem Mandir and other episodes as well as Ink Adventures edited by Meenu Jasdanwala. Am I right, ma'am? Thank you so much, ma'am, for sparing your valuable time. And we are very fortunate enough to have you. Without wasting time, I hand over the session to ma'am. Ma'am, the stage is all yours. Thank you.
Yeah, she just got disconnected before a few seconds, and I think she is trying to reconnect. Very soon she'll be able
No
to
problem.
connect. Yeah.
Meanwhile, let me request all the participants to keep your mic and camera off so that we can have the best quality of delivery. I think she has joined back.
Yes. Yes. Please, ma'am. Sorry, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Imran sir and Parth, for this introduction. And I'm really sorry for the disruption that is caused by the network issues. Due to the network issue, I will not be able to present the slideshow that I have prepared, but I'm very sure that I'll share it with Parth so that he can circulate it to the students. The topic that I am given today is criticism during a romantic age. And if we want to study any age of literature, we should always consider it comparatively with reference to the previous age. So before the romantic age, there comes the neoclassical age. I think I am audible to all of you.
Yes, ma'am, you are audible, very much audible.
Okay. So, if we roughly try to span the time of Romantic period in English literature, it is most probably from 1785 to 1832. But there are certain alternatively dates also considered for the beginning of the Romantic period. Some people consider it as to be beginning in 1785 after the death of Dr. Samuel Johnson. Some of them consider it to be beginning from 1789 at the time of French Revolution, and some also consider it to be beginning from 1798 when lyrical ballads were published. So there are certain alternative dates available, but we roughly span it from 1785 to 1832. Now, if we want to understand the Romantic age in a better way, we should consider the features and characteristics of neoclassical age first, because the difference in characteristics and the reaction to the neoclassical age is the beginning of the new ideas of romantic age. So if we look at briefly the characteristics of neoclassical age, then in neoclassical age there was strong traditionalism. The writers had distrust for the radical innovation, and they all had respect for the classical writers who were from Greece and Rome. And the writers uh, have also the writers from Greece and Rome who have achieved some kind of excellence in their respective fields in all the major literary genres. And so the neoclassical writers followed the classical writers. That is why the age is named as neoclassic. They presented the classic works in a new way. So the term is neoclassic. Literature is considered as art, and the art requires certain kind of skills, and these skills requires innate talents as well, and these talents should be perfected by practice. This was the belief in the age. And so the neoclassical ideal is focused on craftsmanship. It is also favored that a craftsman should have a correction, it should have attention to the details, it should have a finish, a certain kind of eye for details. Uh, the writers also considered that the natural genius of the writers were available to them, and they could craft their ideals in a different way and present the works which was a kind of grace beyond the reach of art, as Alexander Pope says in his essay on criticism, that a grace beyond the reach of art is it is a kind of art that the writers can conceive through natural geniuses. But the prevailing view was that the writers like Homer and Shakespeare were extremely rare, but sometimes they did not possess, most of the writers did not possess the genius. And that is why what they need to do was to correct themselves, to practice their art, to finish their skills. The representative writers of neoclassical age strove for correctness, stylistic decorum, and rules. And that is why they also followed certain uh, writing rules when they produced epic, tragedy, comedy, pastoral. So the writing was limited, or writing was in a kind of box that followed strict rules. But the subject of the writing was human beings. As we all know, that human beings are okay, literature is the mirror of society, we all know that, right? So the human beings are integral part of the primary subject matter of literature, and that is why the poetry is also an imitation of human life. If we go back to Plato, we realize that art is an imitation. So the neoclassical writers believed that the primary subject matter of literature is human beings, and that is why poetry is also an imitation of human life, and that is why it imitates the human actions and gives it an artistic form. This imitation is converted to artistry, thus it gives the readers pleasure and instructions. So the central ideal of neoclassic humanism was not art for art's sake, but it was art for humanity's sake. And that is why these writers viewed human beings as limited agents who ought to set only accessible goals. So the goals that were accessible, and the writer should set only accessible goals. In art as well as in life, the law of measure as well as acceptance of limits upon one's freedom was admired. So everyone admired that we should be in this strict rule. The rules related to subject matter, related to structure, related to diction were followed. Now, if we come to the Romantic period, then Romantic period is a kind of reaction or response to these rules provided by the neoclassics. So what Romantics did was they favored innovation rather than traditionalism. Wordsworth is the writer who is most prominent, and along with Wordsworth, we have Coleridge, we have William Blake, we have P.B. Shelley, we have John Keats. These are the several important figures who have also contributed in developing the theories of writing. Right? So Wordsworth denounced the upper class subjects and poetic diction of the previous century, and what he proposed to deal with was to deal with the common life. And this common life should not be presented in an aristocratic or royal diction. It should be presented in the selection of language which is really used by man. If you know the definition of the poetry given by Wordsworth, you will be able to recall it. And if you are not able to recall it, don't worry. I am going to dictate the whole definition as well. If we look at the definition of the poetry given by Wordsworth, then it says that poetry is the spontaneous overflow of powerful feeling. So there are certain kind of internal feelings which are collected, and they are recollected in emotions, and they are recollected emotions in tranquility. So the poet thinks upon his emotions and then crafts his work. So that is why what Wordsworth favored or denounced, or what he proposed was to deal with the common life of the people. So in neoclassical age, there was aristocratic life, there was royal characteristics, but in romantic age, the writers favored the common life. And the language that they used was also a language used by man. Man simply means common people. The lowly subjects were also given a kind of serious or tragic treatment. The decorums of rules were not followed in that manner. The way neoclassical writer adhered to the rules, the romantic writers favored the freedom. So the freedom is the key element of romanticism, because if we know the brief history of French Revolution, we know that fraternity, freedom, are the equality, are the words that were very common in that period, and the people favored freedom, people favored equality. People were coming closer to each other. The classes in the society were trying to merge. So the equality was proposed, and that is also seen in the works that are presented, that are written by the writers during that age. So the writers also dealt with the supernatural elements. The writers like Keats, Coleridge, they have also exploited the realm of supernatural. Like the writers like Wordsworth, Blake, Shelley, they believe that the poet should be considered as a prophet, and the poet should write in a visionary mode. And so they also use certain kind of symbols, and these symbols had a significance beyond their physical qualities. So uh, Wordsworth himself Shelley proclaims in one of his lines that I always seek in what I see the likeness of something beyond the present and tangible object. Thus, symbolism is very evident, and symbolism was the object that symbolized something was had a kind of significance beyond its physical qualities. If we look at Wordsworth's definition of poetry, it says that poetry is the spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings. If we mark the word spontaneous, it says that the process of writing poetry is spontaneous. Now, if you compare this with the definition or the ideals provided by the neoclassical writers, then you will remember that they called it artistic imitation. They called it a skill which need to be processed or which need to be perfected. But in Wordsworth, it is a spontaneous process. If you remember a line from John Keats, it says that if poetry comes not as naturally as the leaves to a tree, it had better not come at all. Right? So, this way, the writers favored the unforced, spontaneous, free of artificial rules and conventions. The poetry that was unforced, spontaneous, and free of artificial rules and conventions was favored. And thus, there are the poetry should flow out naturally and smoothly from the soul of the poet. But it must also be noted that according to Wordsworth, the poetry is not never an immediate expression of such powerful emotions, because when a poet sees something, he ponders over it long and deeply, and then he recollects it in tranquility. That is why there is a certain kind of process over the emotions or the feelings that the poet has acquired. So the process of composition also passes through four different stages, and in these four stages, the emotions or the feelings are converted into experience and are converted into a certain kind of writing. So the very first stage that Wordsworth provides is the stage of observation, where an object or character or incident is perceived, and there are certain powerful emotions that are generated by observing at the character in poet's mind. In the second stage, what the poet does is he recollects those emotions. So, how he recollects? He contemplates over those emotions. Contemplating means thinks over those emotions, and these emotions are recollected in tranquility. So, at this stage, memory comes into play, and what does it do? It brings out the unconscious feelings, or it triggers the poet's visit of the past experience, and the poet is full of the same feeling that he had acquired at the time of first encounter with that incident. In the third stage, what the poet does is he filters whatever he has acquired. So filtering is where the poet purges the non-essential elements. So there are so many emotions that are gathered by the poet, but in the third stage of filtering, the poet purges whatever is not essential and tries to make his experience communicable. In the fourth stage, the writer starts composing. So it is the actual composition where the writer starts writing something. It is in the fourth stage, after surpassing the recollection, surpassing the observation, and surpassing the filtering process. The fourth stage it is where the writer starts composing. So here the writer or the poet becomes a communicator. In the words of Wordsworth, it becomes a man speaking to man. There is a line in his definition as well, that the poetry should be in such a words that it should look like a man speaking to man. So it should not have the high diction or the bombastic of words. It should be easy to understand, and it should be like man speaking to man. So what is important to him is not just the expression of his joy, but the way he shares his expressions, his emotions with the readers. That is very important. What if we come to Coleridge's definition? So the Coleridge has written in it was, I think, Coleridge defines the two terms, fancy and imagination. Earlier writers have used these two words, fancy and imagination, as synonymous. But when we come to Coleridge, Coleridge gives a different kind of analysis of these two words, fancy and imagination. So what fancy is? Fancy is a mechanical process. So when we look at something, we try to it comes into our mind. So it is the faculty of the mind which is apart from reason and memory. So the images are stored, images are acquired through fancy. So he recording function or the storing of images is the fancy. In his words, if we quote Coleridge, he says that fancy has no other counters to play with but fixities and definites. The fancy is indeed no other than a mode of memory emancipated from the other order of time and space. So the fancy is mechanical process which receives certain kind of elementary images. And these images are then differentiated and are passed on to the imagination process. Now, what is imagination? Imagination is something that produces a certain higher kind of poetry. Imagination dissolves, diffuses, dissipates in order to recreate. These are the words quoted by Coleridge himself, that imagination dissolves, diffuses, dissipates in order to recreate, or where this process is rendered impossible, yet still, at all events, it struggles to idealize and unify. It is essentially vital, even as all objects are essentially fixed and dead. So, if the objects are itself dead, the art of imagination makes it vital. So, for the creation of high kind of poetry, what the poet requires is to possess the faculty of imagination. So, the imagination, in the 14th chapter of Biographia Literaria, Coleridge says that imagination is a kind of synthetic power. It reveals itself in the balance or reconciliation of opposite or discordant qualities of sameness with difference. What does imagination do? It tries to uh, create a balance in the opposite qualities. The sameness is balanced with difference, general is balanced with concrete, the idea is balanced with the image. Thus, the faculty of imagination assimilates and synthesizes the disparate elements, matlab the opposite elements into an organic whole. Thus, the poetic work is like a growing plant which evolves according to its own internal principles, and that is why it acquires an organic form. It is not like rules that are imposed upon a poem, but it is like a growing plant. So here Coleridge also differs from the neoclassical writers. Now, what were the subjects of romantic poetry? So most of the subjects that the writers preferred to write on were related to natural outscapes. The flora and fauna, landscape, external nature was something that the writers followed. So the outer scene worked as a stimulus for the poet, and this stimulus engaged the poet in the activity of thinking, and thus these feelings and the meditation over these emotions were stimulated by natural phenomenon, and the center and it triggered a certain kind of activity. What was this activity? This activity of thinking. So the realm of the poet is the mind of man. In Wordsworth's word, if we say that it is the mind of man that the writer is trying to. So the neoclassical writing was about the other people, but when we come to the romantic period, it is about uh, the poet himself or the speaker himself. If we look at the most prominent works of the Romantic age, then most of the time the speaker is identified with the protagonist himself. So if we look at Wordsworth's Prelude, it is believed that it is Wordsworth himself talking about something of his own life experiences. Lord Byron's Childe Harold, all these protagonists are identified with the poet himself. So the poets are also represented. The subjects of the poets are also represented as solitary figures who are engaged in certain kind of quest, and they are also presented as outcasts. So, in this period, the poets believe that ours is an age of new beginning and high possibility. Why? Because of French Revolution. So, in the lines of Wordsworth, if I would like to quote, it says that our being's heart and home is with infinitude, and only there. William Blake also proclaims that less than everything cannot satisfy man. So, the Romantic writers believe that humanity's aspirations have something beyond its limits, and beyond its limits, it can triumph. So, the neoclassical writers believe that a writer should assume or do according to its limits, but the Romantic writers thought of crossing these limits. Number of Romantic writers consisted that The highest art is beyond the finite human possibility. And so the limited was replaced with the preference for the glory of the imperfect, in which the failure of the artist was also looked at as the grandeur of his aim. The writers have also tried to write in the classical genres of epic, as you look at Paradise if you look at Prelude is a kind of spiritual autobiography, and it is kind of written with inspiration from Milton's Paradise Lost. If you look at Shelley's Prometheus Unbound, it is a kind of a Greek drama's imitation, or you can say inspired from it. Keats' Hyperion uh, is also a Miltonic epic, and thus Blake wrote as a visionary and prophetic epic. So these three writers, William Wordsworth, S.T. Coleridge, and Shelley, are the prominent critics of the age. So they believed in the expressive theory of art. The words like imagination, individual, emotions, sincerity, supernatural, liberty, fraternity, inspiration, equality, freedom are the key terms of this age. The poet is not an artist, but he is a sensitive being who possesses extraordinary imagination and writes in a language which is a very common language, and it should be understandable by the rustic folk as well. So it is like man speaking to man. So Coleridge, in his 1817 work Biographia Literaria, differentiates these two faculties of writing, fancy and imagination. Imagination is again divided into two further parts, that is primary and secondary. Primary imagination is the elemental power of human perception, while secondary imagination is the artistic imagination, where the work or the emotions are given an organic form. And there is also one another work by P.B. Shelley, Defense of Poetry. So we should look at these three writers, these three poets comparatively. If you look at Wordsworth's ideas first, then he's according to him, the poetry should be rooted in rustic life. It should be in a language of man speaking to man. Rustics are more genuine in emotions rather than the royal, or what we say, uh, the writers of neoclassical age favored the royal, while according to Wordsworth, we should uh, present the emotions of rustics. The rustic subjects are to be purified by the poet. The word purified is used by Wordsworth himself in his famous essay. So, what does the writer do? He contemplates over the emotions, and these emotions are intellectualized. The diction is either adopted from the language of man, or it should be closer to the language of man. There is also a line where Wordsworth says that the diction should be closer to the language of prose as well. So the great poetry should have a certain kind of diction which should be closer to the language of prose. So this is also a point which Wordsworth tries to highlight. If we look at Coleridge's idea in his Biographia Literaria, which is itself a kind of mixed genre, it is autobiographical, it is philosophical, it is religious, it is critical as well. So Coleridge's work is written in response to Wordsworth. So he defines that there are two important elements in writing. One is form, and second is perception. And this is done by the primary and secondary imagination. So art is not a copy or imitation of nature, but it represents reality. The primary imagination is the repetition of the finite mind, while the secondary imagination dissolves, diffuses, dissipates in order to recreate. It struggles to unify the images collected. Fancy is limited, but secondary imagination is the key. It is the mark of artistic genius. The word Coleridge also uses the word exemplastic imagination, right? So the And apart from the poet, he also discusses the types of readers. He has divided readers into four different types. According to him, the first type of readers are sponges who absorb all they read and return it nearly in the same state. Hmm? The second type of readers are like sandglasses who retain nothing and are content to get through a book for the sake of getting through the time. The third are the strain bags who retain merely the dregs of what they read. And the fourth are the mogul diamonds who are equally rare and valuable and who profit by what they read and are enabled to profit others as well. So he also distinguishes the readers. So the Coleridge's ideas are both on the art of writing as well as on the readers. When we come to Shelley, Shelley looks at the poet as a philosopher, and poetry is the largest category. So poetry includes philosophy as well. So according to Shelley, poets are legislators and prophets, and because they are prophets, they participate with the eternal. And so the poet's vision transcends the vision of society. And so the poet's vision can save the world. So all these three poets, Wordsworth, Coleridge, and Shelley, have different ideas for the process of writing as well as for the poets. They are in contrast to each other. So if we look at the key ideas of this age, then Romantic is the reaction to rationalism of Augustine and neoclassicism. So there is a shift from emotion to imagination. We find love for liberty. There is celebration of subjectivity. The impressions are more important than rules. If we look at neoclassical works, they are worked by following the rules. You might have heard Alexander Pope's closed couplets, right? So it was written according to the rules. But here, what is more important is impressions. The impressions that are made upon the poet's mind by the natural stimulus. Natural stimulus means the natural element or the landscape or anything from the nature that the poet has uh, acquired in him. There is individuality of the writer is also focused upon. There is a freedom for inquiry. So the nature and function of poetry are not style, diction, or zoners. It is no longer an imitation, but it is an expression of emotions and imagination. So the emphasis is given on simplicity in theme and treatment. The simplicity becomes the key emphasis. The writer is certain who is able to receive these impressions as well as is able to impart them, right? Wordsworth's ideas were on the poetic diction, in which he says that it should be man speaking to man, it should be close to rustics, but it should be modified to reach to the reach to the uh, abilities of the rustics. So the task of the writer is to modify his words so that it becomes closer to the words of the common people. Coleridge's idea are on the fancy and imagination, where he divides these two terms, that these are not the similar or synonymous terms, they are different. So if you want to uh, write a higher kind of poetry, the writer should possess imagination. Imagination is also subdivided into two parts, primary and secondary. The secondary imagination is something which dissipates, dissolves, and recreates. If we come to Shelley, Shelley proposes that poets are the legislature of mankind, poets are the prophet, poets' vision can transcend the vision of society and can save the world. So, overall, what we look in the Romantic age is the democratization of the ideas. Coleridge used to give lectures and writers used to attend his lectures. So the ideas were discussed publicly, democratically with the people. The way nature is for all, right? This was followed in writing as well. So the movement was back to nature rather than presenting yourself in aristocratic or social manner. The writer should be able to present in a natural manner. I initially I told you the lines of Keats as well, that the poetry should come as naturally as the leaves to a tree. So the task of the poet is to present his work not as a present his work as a natural process, as a natural product of his imagination, and not as an acquired or practiced work. So the task of writer is to present it in such a words which are possible for the readers to understand, for the common readers to understand as well. So the key ideas of romantic age are given by these three prominent poets: William Wordsworth, S.T. Coleridge, and P.B. Shelley. Wordsworth's ideas are about the art of poetry, that it comes from the emotions recollected in tranquility, and it is spontaneous. Coleridge talks about the art of poetry, that it is not merely the imitation of nature, but it is devised from the primary and secondary imagination, and secondary imagination dissolves, diffuses, and dissipates in order to recreate. And it struggles to unify those emotions and tries to present the impressions achieved by the poet in a language which is possible to be understood by the common people. When we come to Shelley, Shelley puts the poet on highest rank. According to him, poets are the prophets, poets are the legislature of the society, and poets' vision can save the world. So, all these three writers give prominence to the poet, to the uh, ideas of back to nature, to the ideas of being natural. So the language, the theme, the content, the diction, everything should be natural. It should not look like a practiced word, but it should look like a natural response of the poet. So these are the key ideas of romantic criticism, and I think this is all that I could say about criticism during romantic age. If there are any questions or any kind of feedback. I think I was able to.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Am I audible?
Yes, yes, you are audible. Is Dr. Imran Khan there? Uh, I think he's got disconnected for some while. Meanwhile, participants, if there are questions, uh, doubts, queries, you can put them in the chat box. Uh, I don't know if Dr. Imran Khan has been able to rejoin.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes,
Parth?
yes, you are audible. Yes.
Yeah.
Uh, uh,
Due to some technical glitch, maybe it was disconnected.
yeah, yeah. But Madam has completed her presentation, and we are asking
Yes,
questions
yes.
and feedback from the participants. Please take over, Imran bhai.
The questions are welcome from the participants. If anybody has any question, comment, doubt.
Meanwhile, I'll share my PPT with you people, because due to technical glitch, I
Yes,
wasn't
please.
able to share it with you all. So it was thoroughly a kind of merely speech. But I'll share my PPT with you all so that you can read it later on and could prepare.
हेलो हेलो
Yes, yes. Nitin Pitharia ji, बोलिए.
यस यस मैडम you have talked about the criticism and mainly the criticism is based on the poetic process as well as the diction of the poem in this romantic criticism. So
Yes.
before that, have you come across anyone has talked about this creative process? And are these, Wordsworth and Coleridge have got influence from them, or it is just personal views of theirs?
See, if we look at the word romantic, then it is not only used in the romantic period in English literature itself, it is many a times used in the German and in the French and continental literature as well. So, these writers were influenced by the Greek and French writers as well. So, the term romantic is not limited to the English writers only. So it was previously, or I think it is many a times used with the periods of German and French, and you will find romantic period in American literature as well, but it comes very later, in the very later period. Uh, I'm not sure about the process of writing that you have asked me, but I'll have to, I think, read it again because I'm not sure. I have read it somewhere, but I'm not sure which writer has talked about the process of writing. But yes, there was an essay by Longinus on the Sublime, which talks about the process of writing by giving certain kind of characteristics that a work of art should possess. But instead of Longinus, I don't know any other writer who has. I mean, it is not in my perception till now that the one who has talked about the process of writing. I'll have to go through it. I think these are the two things that I have come across till now. If you know about these the question that you have asked, you can definitely share it with me so that I can uh, add up to my knowledge.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, 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 you are audible. Yes,
I
Philip
think,
Sidney.
yeah, I think, ma'am, even one finds in the works of the post-structuralist critics
Yes,
uh,
it comes
certain
later
newer
on, but not the
insights. Yeah,
previous one.
yeah,
Yes, yes, yes.
not the
That is in
previous
the
one, but
later
in
period,
the
but
later
not
part.
in the
Yes,
previous one. Yes, yes.
true.
Yes, it comes in Philip Sidney, I think, but but in the later period, we come to the structuralism and all. And there is also an essay by M.H. Abrams, I think, Mirror, but I have forgotten the name of that essay.
Mirror and the Lamp.
Ha, Mirror and the Lamp is the name of the essay where we find the detailed discussion on romantic ideals. Yes.
Hello,
Hello.
hello.
Yes, Nitin bhai.
Yes, yes. Madam, as in your introduction, Dr. Imran Khan told that you are also a poet. So it may be a personal view, but can you relate these theories given by Wordsworth and Coleridge with your own experience of poetic or creative writing?
Uh, of course, it is a very nice question. I would like to share one of my experience of writing. I agree with this term of Wordsworth that uh, it is the spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings. But I don't agree with the word that it is emotions recollected in tranquility, because the poems that I have written till now are a kind of expression of my emotions which have come spontaneously to me, and they are written when I have encountered something at a moment. So they are not written in after after kind of intellectualization, but they are written at the time of encounter with the object. And so I agree with this spontaneous overflow, but not with the emotions recollected in tranquility. Yes, of course, there are certain of my poems which I have written out of my imagination, but I don't agree with this term because there are the process of writing is different with each writer. So the way the one writer writes is different with the other writer. So we cannot, I think, devise the complete or the finite theory of writing poetry, because it is different. The imagination comes to the writers differently. It is different for each of them. So, okay, for criticism purpose, these theories are okay. But when you ask a writer, the writer does not write by keeping in mind these theories. He just writes. He just expresses the way. Matlab, this is the process with me, that I just write.
All right. Any other questions, observations?
Yes, Partha.
Yes, please, Nitin bhai.
In one of the session, one participant gave a good idea that after each session, if
Yes,
a small quiz is being prepared of
correct.
10 questions at least, then at the
True.
end we would have a question bank also, and along with that,
Yes, yes.
it will be beneficial for the participants also.
True. In fact, we have already assigned this task to two of our resource persons
Mhm,
who are preparing a sort of online Google quiz,
mhm.
and I think they are working on it. As soon as the quiz is ready, we'll be forwarding the link.
Am I
So
audible?
yes, yes, yes,
Hello.
you are audible, Imran.
Ma'am,
Yes, you are audible.
I have one question. If we have time,
Yes, 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 Imran sir.
uh, we know that in Romanticism or in Romantic age, Coleridge and Wordsworth were the poets who, in fact, gave the face to the entire age. And Wordsworth, in your talk also, you mentioned that Wordsworth was of the opinion that the language of the literature should be such that even a layman can understand. And somewhere Coleridge was not so, I mean, fully agree with this opinion of him. My question is that in Romanticism, we also find that the entire flavor of the poem seems to be going towards the nature. So, can we assume
Yes,
that it
yes.
was that the people of that age or the laymen particularly, they were more associated with the nature and the whole idea of how nature affects them in their personal life. Was that the reason that Wordsworth was having that opinion that the language also of the literature should touch a layman, or was there any other reason? As you rightly just mentioned, that the poet writes solely to express himself and to convey ideas towards the society and the people. So what was the main reason that he opined about the language to be such a simplicity that a common man can also understand? Thank you.
Okay. The first thing that I have mentioned in this lecture as well, that if we look at the neoclassical writers, what they followed were the strict rules. They were inspired or were representing or writing about the aristocratic or royal people, But when we
Right.
come to Romantic age, it is the influence of French Revolution, first of all, because it talks about the equality and fraternity and individualism. That is
Yes.
what French Revolution talks about. So the very first element that affects these Romantic writers is the French Revolution, the first of all.
Right.
Secondly, this aristocratic life is not given prominence by the Romantic writers. But if you look at Wordsworth's personal life, you might be aware about his residence as well.
Yes. Yes.
That yes, and we also find supernatural elements or Gothic literature in the Romantic period itself. So what the
Yes. Yes.
writers were doing was going back to the nature because they felt that nature is spontaneous itself. So there is no
Right.
artificiality in nature.
Right.
So
Right.
the
Right.
creation should be free from artificiality.
Right.
The
Right.
way neoclassical writers presented the works, I think it seemed to them the artificial because it was prepared, it was practiced, it was written in certain manner. But when we come to Romantic, these poets are talking about being natural.
Right.
And
Right.
also it needed practice, but the output should seem natural. I think that was
Hmm.
the key idea that these writers are talking about. The output should seem natural rather than the and also there is a term, there is a line where Wordsworth calls that the poetry should be in the prose, I mean in the language of prose, so the
Right. Right.
layman can understand. It should be in language of prose. So he is not favoring the technicalities of writing poetry, the way we find the strict rules of writing a sonnet, writing an epic, writing a
Hmm.
tragedy. He
Hmm.
is not talking about the technicalities. He is talking about the way the poetry can be written using a language which seems to be prosaic, but it is still poetry and it is possible to be understood by the common people as well. But we find delusions in Wordsworth writing himself as well. If you read Prelude, you
Hmm.
will understand that he himself does not follow his own ideals somewhere in his works as well.
Very true.
Uh,
Very true.
yes.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Imran sir.
Do we have any other questions or suggestions for this lecture series? Ma'am has, fully given the justice to the topic. If we have any other questions to this particular lecture series, we can include those questions. And as Nitin sir also asked us to prepare one simple, quiz, then we are also ready with that in just. In few coming lectures we'll be presenting that also. And how does this lecture series helps you in your personal reading and preparation? And ma'am, if you want to suggest some keys to the students, how to prepare for this NetSlat and the technicalities of the exams, and how does this lecture series and the reading would help them, then that will be great if students can be benefited by some of your tips.
Okay. So the exam pattern that in which I gave the exam was different than the present exam pattern, but the themes or the subject matter remains the same. So I will share my personal experience of reading first. When I used to read the writers. So my first task was to read the periods of literature. Then I used to divide these periods by bifurcating the writers. Then I bifurcated them according to the genres. And then I focused on their works as well. So my reading was a step by step reading. So I think to prepare for such an exam, you should go step by step, because then and then you will be able to give full justice to each writer. And I think for each writer, you should read the Companion to English Literature by Oxford, because it will give you a detailed analysis of the writers and their works as well. So the first thing is to read the history books, where you get familiar with the periodization of literature. You should be clear with the periodization first, then you should be clear with the writers of each period and the genres or the works that were there in those periods. Then you should go to the writers, and then you should go to the work. So you should follow this step by step pattern, and that way, I think if you go this way for 6 to 7 months, it will take only 6 to 7 months to complete the whole work if you devise all of your time for this purpose. And you will definitely be able to clear set or net. I think it is not that much difficult. Even I was able to clear both. So I think you all can do this with this manner, by this step by step reading, and focus on the canonical writers first when you are in the last stage. And I think I also used to read the previous year question papers as well. So that will also help you when you are preparing for your net or set. Yes. So invest in books, right? Invest in I think the proper history books that will actually enrich your knowledge. And there are, for English literature, we have so many websites as well, where you find detailed analysis and details of each work and each writer. So that will also help you when you are in certain kind of question. So go step by step, by beginning from the periodization to the zoners, to the writers, and to the works. This will help you in understanding, and I think also expressing your understanding in while in the examination. Yes.
Yes, thank you so much, ma'am. That was really inspiring. And on behalf of the Alumni Association and the whole team, I am very thankful to you for sharing your valuable time. And getting benefited by your expertise and the experience of cracking net and SLAT. Now, if the participants do not have any more questions, we can. Apart, do we have anything to add to?
Not much. Only that I think I've put it in the chat box. Tomorrow's session will be by Mr. Kishan Joshi. It will be on neoclassical period. He'll be focusing on the genres satire and periodicals. Then see you all at 6 tomorrow.
Fine.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Imran bhai.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, ma'am. Goodbye.